when the Pentagon was hit. That made me sick because my mother was a research psychologist for the Pentagon at the time.
Today, my guest is Brigitte Cutshall, founder of Gemini Media, the creative force behind impactful storytelling. She tells really amazing stories, which is why I picked her to speak today and to tell that story of how the day went for her and how it impacted her and to get a feeling of that pulse throughout the world. You're not expecting on a Tuesday morning to go to class to turn on the TV and see a building come down like that.
Oh, yeah.
Let's start with your day. You woke up.
I was in Chicago and I was getting ready to do another presentation that day at the conference, and it showed up on the TV. They were showing the images of the plane hitting the towers.
You had your mom right in there, and that's a scary feeling, not knowing and not being able to reach out and to know where she is and what's happening.
We saw that video, and then that made me sick because my mother was a research psychologist for the Pentagon at the time. She was actually in that same room a week prior. One of the women that she was with was the wife of a general who was killed in that Pentagon hit.
What does it take for you to run towards the problem as opposed to away of it?
Those firefighters, they are heroes. And some of the co-workers were on the West Coast, so they had to rent an RV because there weren't any cars.
Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horia. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and how we can help. We have a special episode today. We're dedicating this episode to the memory of 9/11, 2001. And today, my guest is Brigitte Cutshall, founder of Gemini Media, the creative force behind impactful storytelling. She tells really amazing stories, which is why I picked her to speak today and to tell that story of how the day went for her and how it impacted her and to get a feeling of that pulse throughout the world. And she also hosts the Real Things Living podcast. She's the author of several books and brings over 30 years of experience in publishing and communications to help others share their stories and inspire hope. A passionate health advocate and multiple cancer thriver, Brigitte enjoys staying active with her family, dogs, and especially running. We'll get into that, but she just ran a marathon for 9/11. Hello, Brigitte, and welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues.
Thank you, Ali. It's so glad to be on here again. This is our second adventure with Compassiviste Dialogues.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And this time, it's specifically because in our conversations together, 9/11 came up, and I found out that you had really deep ties into the event, being that your mom was working at the Pentagon at the time. Your dad was in the Army. We'll get into that in more detail, but let's start with the day. I mean, I don't know why I remember it so clearly. I was not even in the US. I was in Canada, but it's such a vivid memory for me. And yeah, let's start with your day. You woke up.
Right. I was actually in Chicago for a conference. I was one of the speakers there. So I had to be there early. That makes it, like before the 9/11 happened, I was there before. And then I had sharing a room with another coworker, another woman. And, you getting up, you get dressed when you're in a hotel room, you turn on the TV, you just have to that's what we did. And all of a sudden, because Chicago was an hour behind, Eastern time. And it showed up on the TV, and I was getting ready to do another presentation that day at the conference. And that was just shocking, just jaw dropping about they were showing the images of the plane hitting the towers. And, even though I'm in Chicago, you still feel like, it's just scary as heck. And so I called my boss and cause I'm like, we're all freaking out. We can't help it. And so he said, yes, come to the trade center. That's where I forgot the name of the trade center in Chicago. So we went there, and this was an international conference, by the way, Allie. A lot of people got stuck because, as everybody knows, they had to shut down all the airports. Mm-hmm. And we were all just in shock. And then on the big screen in the conference center, I didn't like this, but they kept, playing the news on there over and over and over. So the whole conference went shut down. I mean, we were just in shock. And that's when I think later, I'm not sure how many hours later, but then that's when the Pentagon was hit. We saw that video, and then that made me sick because my mother was a research psychologist for the Pentagon at the time. And I thought, oh my God, is my mom, I called my husband. We had mobile phones. My mother did not. So, we were just in shock. And so my husband tried to call, my stepfather and didn't reach him. He was still in the DC area. My mom, we didn't know. We learned later, then my stepfather called my husband back that my mother was safe. She was in San Diego for a conference.
Okay.
So thank goodness. And then, but it was just all erupted. It's major emotions for my mother because I later learned that she was actually in that same room a week prior. That was the section of Pentagon for a meeting in that same one, that kid. And so imagine her. And one of the women that she was with was the wife of a general who was killed in that Pentagon hit. And then again, you're trying to process all this, and all this stuff's on the news all the time. And then my husband called me. He wanted, we were just, like I said, trying to process everything. And he called me, says, I'm going to come get you. And I said, just wait, because we weren't sure what was going on, because then another plane, I think, was knocked down. I don't remember what city it happened in. So we knew flying wasn't safe. And so my boss, I call him my boss, whatever, my manager, we couldn't get, any rental cars. He rented a car for me and one of my coworkers because we had 2 young kids. And because I wanted to get home, but I told my husband to stay safe, stay home with the boys. And so anyway, my husband said, okay. So then we learned the car that our boss took, the CEO of the company took it over. And that was not cool, because that showed me he was not a good leader. He thought he was more important than his employees who had children. That's kind of how I saw it, Allie, right? But we have little kids. They want to see their mom or their, so that was like, okay, another red flag for me. What am I going to do here? And then, so we at least got to dinner together. Everybody, we're just trying to process, what was going on, as we don't know. And it was just cathartic for, we take things for granted. We take everything for granted. And then eventually I was able to talk to my stepfather, because he was still at home, and make sure, everything's good, everything's fine. And we ended up having to get a bus for us to get back to Georgia. And some of the coworkers were on the West Coast, so they had to rent an RV because there weren't any cars. They rented an RV.
Even Chicago to Atlanta is a distance.
Well, we had
you
to
saw
be
a
on
lot of the U.S. on that trip.
Yeah, we were on a bus. Well, I was trying to stay in the front because everybody, I'm sorry, I didn't do this, but a lot of people were drinking. They were so stressed out. And I laugh about it now, but I don't know how many hours it took on the bus, but it had a toilet on there, but it ended up overflowing. That kind of stuff, because everybody was drinking so much beer, the guys, and using that's kind of how it was. And I'm just like, oh my God. So I tried to hold it as long as I could. And then a couple of times I would wait till we get to a gas station, so we were just trying to be there for each other. We just I don't drink, so I wasn't, having to go to the bathroom as much as they were. But that's just kind of what I remember. And I'm just so glad that my boss did the right thing, but then the CEO did not. So that's when I finally got home, it was I hadn't seen my kids in over 2 weeks because, well, like I said, I was there prior to 9/11 happened, and then we couldn't get home. And it was such an amazing just to see them again. It was just very emotional. And then my husband said he was going to rejoin the military. And I'm like, what? And I convinced him not to, Allie. I said, your boys need you. Because that's a man, someone who's been in the military. That's their reaction. They want to protect their country. And I convinced him not to. And then he's like, okay. I convinced him, your boys need you and me. And then my mother, it took her a much longer time to get back from California because you can't drive from California to Washington, D.C. That's too far. So that's what was going on. Lots of cars were gone. All the gas pumps were running out of gas, Allie, on the roads because of this was going on. People don't, anyway, remember that. And my mom, like I said, she was with the general's wife, and my mom had to console her, and the wife was in denial. She said, oh, my husband probably just passed out in the bathroom or something. She was in denial. So my mom had to help her. And then when she got back to DC, my stepfather had to leave on we don't know what he did. He had to go to a different country, Turkmenistan, which is near Afghanistan. And his background is special forces, and he spoke Arabic and French. So I think he was doing some intel.
So this was one of those covert operations that we're never going to know about. Right.
So that was hard on my mom to deal with this. And then her husband had to be gone for 6 months. So then she got home, and then she had to help support all the families that were affected in Washington, D.C. Not so much in New York, but it affected people in D.C. a lot too. People don't think about that. And it was just amazing. She was telling me how they were just trying to, all the dogs were there that were helping find the bodies, because those dogs are trained. It was just freaky just talking about this. And that's just very traumatic for my mom. And then later, I don't know how, maybe a month or so later, I went up to go check on her because she was by herself. And I think, I don't remember if my boys, I don't remember. It's just a blur because we're all trying to do the right thing and support everybody. And I think, there's just so many things that happened that day. And that's when I think later, I don't know when they started checking you to get on airplanes, but I wasn't afraid to fly though, Allie, afterwards, because I don't know. I just wasn't afraid. I think because, they're doing more security, but I remember the rest of that year, I did do some flying for business. There wasn't much people on the airplanes because people were afraid.
Yeah, I remember that.
But it was just a matter of convincing my memory is convincing my husband, you're not going, don't go back to the military. I need you. Your boys need you. Trying to console my mother, and because she had to help so many, she saw lots and lots of bad stories. And then she was telling me some crazy people were showing up people are just showing up lying about this one woman showed up to the area that she was helping in DC, that she was the president of the United States. Just crazy people were just showing up. There's just the stuff that my mom had to deal with. She's very brave. I couldn't do what she did, but that's really, it just brought us together. I just remember, we just hug people more. I remember doing that more. Hugging strangers. That's really what we need to remember from that lesson, right? It brought us all together. It's unfortunately a bad tragedy had to happen. And I knew people in New York too. And so they were sharing stuff too. So I was trying to console them. I felt like, I guess that I was their counselor too, trying to console them. They weren't personally affected, but it still affected the environment, the community. It kind of like the vibes. And I think I'm just grateful to have been okay. But then my next step was I said bye to that company, Allie. I left 2 weeks later because it showed me that CEO put himself before his employees, and he wasn't even from the United States. Okay. That to me, I just saw that I won't say who, what, when, where, but that's when I decided bye. And I left my boss, who was really kind to me. He understood. I said, anyway, that to me was a poor decision that guy made. And I think it wasn't just me, other people left too.
Yeah. Wow. You had your mom right in there, and that's a scary feeling, not knowing and not being able to reach out and to know where she is and what's happening, and then having your stepfather be away for 6
6 months, right?
months. Yeah. Right in the midst of it and not knowing, what's going on there either. That's difficult. And I remember I was in Canada at the time. I was in Toronto, and it was the first week of school, and it was like any other morning, and um, I'd gone into the classroom, and it was the first day of the classroom, uh, this was I started my master's program, and it was in those smaller rooms, not the big auditoriums and halls where the undergrads, year ones and stuff happen, but it was in a small room that like 20 people would sit in. And I remember there was a TV in the corner of the room, and somebody said, turn the TV on, turn the TV on. And we turned the TV on, and like you said, the news repeatedly is showing this. And at the time, like, this is a time when there was no social media and all that stuff. So, when you're getting to school, you're not scrolling on Instagram and getting all the news and the updates and anything. You're really just sitting there staring into open space until you get to school, whether you're on a bus or driving or whatever. And it takes a little bit of time for news to travel. And so, somehow the news traveled, turn the TV on, we turn the TV on, and, we see this like something you've never seen, not even in movies, something like outrageous, and like a plane going into a building and then it stops and the building shatters, and like, you know, you're thinking, what did I just see? What did I just witness? And then again, it happens, in another building. And at first you're thinking it was an accident. And like, I remember clearly the first reports weren't a terrorism attack or, bin Laden or none of that. It was really, oh my God, a plane went into the building. And you're like, whoa. And so it took a while before the news kind of shifted towards this was an attack, and the second building, and oh my God, Pentagon got hit as well. And another building and another plane was brought down that was supposed to be on its way to the White House, I think, was brought down in an open field because the passengers kind of, fought the terrorists
Helped.
and whatnot. Yeah, there was, there was a whole event there. Like there was a whole heroic story that went on there in that one as well. We don't know what really happened in that plane, but whatever happened, God bless them. It was really shocking. It was really difficult to kind of like just see
Right.
the images and process it, because you don't see something like, even in wars, there's a new war, a war started, two countries are going at it, or there's a civil war or whatever, and you expect to see people shooting each other, you expect to see people in military uniforms, and you expect to see coffins coming back, and you've seen it so often. I think it's sad, but you kind of are expecting this to happen. You're not expecting on a Tuesday morning to go to class to turn on the TV and see a building come down like that. And so
Oh, yeah.
it's
It was
difficult.
shocking.
And
Well,
yeah, and
I was going
I
to
had a
say,
friend of mine who was in school, not in that
oh,
class, but in school, whose parents both passed away
oh, wow.
in the second tower. They had a law firm, and they both worked together, and they were there, and he was here in this school doing a political science master's, because it was a reputable school for political science, leftist, kind of political science, and so he happened to be there, and he left for I think it was like 2 weeks or so, and then came back, and they kind of like got him caught up and stuff because of the situation and everything.
That's sad.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and it was really sad, because we were friends, and I saw what it did to him. It was really, really sad and difficult. And yeah, it was just, and then everything that happened afterward. I mean, so much of our world is designed post 9/11. It's designed with 9/11 as a centerpiece, that it kind of continued around, and a lot of the issues and the problems and so much happened from that one event. It was really global. It was never about New York. It was global, and I think, like you said, it brought us together. I had traveled to New York often because it's a stone's throw away from Toronto when you jump on a plane. And it was the big city and a popular city globally and especially in the US as well. I mean, going to LA is a lot farther, going to Miami is farther. So, New York was kind of like the place you went to often. And I remember people in New York were very segregated in a sense of, you were from one borough or the other and you kind of stayed among your people or among your area and all of that. A few months after September 11, I went back and it was very different. You kind of started seeing people, be united in a sense. And I remember, the mayor at the time, Giuliani, was really a hero for the city, the state, the country, and in the way he fought and managed to keep people together and really rebuild and be the power behind coming out of this tragedy. It was huge. And it really did bring people together. I mean, people started seeing it more of an attack on dialogue, on democracy, on freedoms, on the ability to live in peace, all of those things versus, something that happened directly to the United States because they were meddling in other countries' affairs that the other countries didn't appreciate or whatever. It was much bigger than that. The scale became much larger. The scale became to a capacity of, we can't have people thinking that they can, attack the essence of what a human is.
As you were talking, I remember seeing that our President Bush, he was new to the role, and he was reading at a school and to some kids, some school books. And then security came in and whispered in his ear what happened. And that was just, it's a shock to him.
That's a big picture. Like you see that picture quite often when you look at historical pictures. There's that, there's that one person, whoever he is, whispering into his ear, and he's sitting there in a little chair among young kids. It wasn't even in high school. It was, I think, kindergarten or something, right?
Yes.
And he's sitting there maybe reading storybook or something with them, and he's like, "What did I just hear?"
Right. He thought it was right. Even when I was in Chicago, we had to be. They thought Chicago was going to be a target. Okay, that's kind of because it's no city, because we had big towers there as well. Not like New York when I was visiting. So that's one of the reasons we had to stay inside and not wander out too much. But that's kind of because you're like, I almost cussed, but we're like, is it going to happen here? And then people felt safer driving vehicles. I think that is, but then again, we ran out of gas, but some stations did.
But it's a fear that still continues, though. I mean,
yes,
when you get on a plane today, we're almost, it's crazy to say this, but we're almost a quarter of a century from 9/11. And yet you get on a plane today and, if somebody, and it happens, like sometimes, somebody pranks or somebody gets angry and says something. And if it's religious or if it's Islamic or, if the person looks like a person who would, and the funny part is, like, we get scared seeing somebody who's Muslim, who's dressed in Islamic clothing and stuff. Meanwhile, the people who did this were all dressed in, pants and T-shirts and stuff, and they passed, they didn't look the part that we worry about all the time. Like when you get on a plane, you're looking for a Taliban-looking person to target and be like, is this guy going to blow the plane up or do something? Meanwhile, it's not that person you got to worry about. It's the person who looks just like you, who's not right up here, who's gonna cause the problem. But yet today you get on a plane and you're thinking, you're looking around and making sure your environment's safe and your surroundings safe.
Maybe that was their goal, was to put fear into our country. That's what I think. And I remember it's global, right? As I'm saying, they put that fear, like if we can hit the US, we can hit anybody. If we can That's kind of
Exactly.
how I saw it. And that's probably why my stepfather disappeared for a while, just because of his background. And he probably really didn't go to Turkmenistan. You know what I'm saying? But that's what he said. We don't know. He can't share that. But I just remember everybody is different and we just got to appreciate what we got. That's kind of how I saw it. Be there and do what is the right thing. That's what my takeaway is. We need to do the right thing to help everybody. And I think it's so brave what those firefighters did. The first responders, that's a better word. Sorry. And that's why I do this local race, around this time frame, is because you got to remember what these guys do. They're not all men, but, you just want to appreciate them, and they are heroes. I think they are the heroes. Does that make sense? And anybody that helps is a hero. The
Yes.
dogs are heroes. They help find those bodies. The dogs are
Mhm.
heroes. There's one
You know,
story I
yeah,
remember.
the first responders, I remember seeing footage back then that I see again sometimes because of social media. It pops up and you see them, these historic archival footages. And I remember seeing a footage of everybody in New York on a street running in one direction and someone running, and they're holding the camera in a reverse angle, so they're showing what's happening as they're running away. And you're seeing this dust kind of follow them, right? And it's really scary. And in that frame, you're seeing firefighters, first responders going in the other direction. And I always think to myself, what does it take for you to run towards the problem as opposed to away from
Right.
the problem? Because everybody's running away. Like if I see smoke, if I see water, a wave coming my way or whatever, I'm running away. I'm not standing there or facing it, right? But there are people out there who are that altruistic,
That's right.
they don't have
That's
that
my,
concept, that fear that I do. Or your CEO, that's what your CEO did. Your CEO said, you know what? There's danger. I'm going to throw whoever it is in front of the danger because I need to get to shore, right? I
right.
need to get to safety. And so I'm going to, here, I don't know, lion's attacking us. I'm going to throw Brigitte in front of the lion, let him make a feast out of Brigitte, and I'm going to be gone by then, and I'm going to be safe,
Right.
God bless, rest in peace, Brigitte. That was his mentality. But
Right. That's how it
to
was.
contrast this with the first responders, it's kind of like that first responder is jumping in there and saying, Brigitte, don't worry, I'm here. I'm going to stand in front between you and the lion, and let's figure this out, right? And I'm going to save you. And um, I get upset because we don't do enough for our first responders, really. Not to sound cliche or anything. I remember when the pandemic started, I don't know if you did this in Atlanta, around a lot of parts of Europe at the time that the pandemic kind of started and the lockdowns happened, people would set an hour like 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. or something. Everybody would start clapping together and thanking the first responders and the nurses and the people who are really supporting communities at that stage as gratitude. And as soon as the pandemic kind of waned down and it settled and stuff, that's it. I mean, nobody cares. Nobody cares that if it wasn't for you, maybe another 10 million people would have died. Nobody cares about
Right.
that. It's
Right.
over, it's done. We don't care. And we don't do so much. Like we don't do so much for the community within us that really holds us together when tragedy happens. I mean, it's all lovely that we love our celebrities and our musicians and stuff, because you know what, they'll have the concerts, they'll be beautiful, they'll be fun, yeah, everybody loves a good time. But what about the people who are supporting that tragic concert, the pandemic, the September 11, all of those things? There are people there, the first responders, who are the same value as the musician on stage in your concert. And how are we supporting them? What are we doing with them, for them, to really show gratitude for the person they are in our community?
That is true. They're very brave. And there's a book out. I can't remember the exact title about this. He was on the board of, he lives near DC, wrote a book about firemen. He goes, I'll die trying to save you. It's kind of like the tone of it, but we need to be more preventative in our building home, how we build our houses. Not just that would help prevent a lot of these firefighters' deaths. There's one, that's what's unfortunately so common. I'm not sure when the changes in the United States happened to make our houses more, I should say fireproof, but be more preventative. The commercial buildings are, but not homes. And a lot of it is people are trying to cut corners, right? That's kind of what it is. Yes, they're cutting corners, and it kind of goes in line with the profit stuff. And so people are still dying from that. I think another story is, you mentioned the celebrity thing. I remember that, who Pete Davidson is. His father,
Yes,
Pete was
his
young.
father, yes.
His father was one of the first responders. And I think
he speaks about it often.
I think that's beautiful. And then, not beautiful, but he's brave to speak about it. And like Ali, try to get more people on this conversation, and people aren't, for some reason, comfortable. It doesn't matter where you live. It affected you. You saw it. We want to just know what your thoughts are.
Right.
And I'm just so appreciative, makes you appreciate what those people do. You want to help them. You want to support them.
Right.
And even though my husband wanted to join the military, go rejoin, I didn't want him to, because I knew my instinct, it just wasn't, he listened, but he's one of those people, he would jump in a heartbeat and help you. That's how he is. And, I don't know where he gets that from, but, I would help you too. It just depends on I don't know if I would run into a fire, but I would help you get out of it.
That's the thing. It's the levels, right? I think everybody will help everybody at a certain level. I mean, It's one thing, throwing a nickel, in a needy person's cup, and it's another thing taking that person home and adopting them.
Yes.
Right? There are different levels of how much we're willing to help, and it really shows in desperate times, because that's when your heroism comes out, right? I had a friend, one day he's driving and a car in front of him crashes and catches fire. And something kind of like out of that, I think the movie was called Crash, where the officer jumped in and saved the couple in the film. But and it happened to be the same the officer who abused them earlier. But regardless, my friend jumps in, stops his car, runs out, goes to the burning car, breaks the window, and drags a lady out of the car who had passed out because her head hit the dashboard and she had passed out, and the fire was starting to consume the car. And the gentleman who was driving was able to get out. So he got out of the one side of the same side, but after he pulled the woman out who was passed out. And all of this adrenaline, he didn't feel anything, but he actually had stitches over his knuckles because he had broken the window and cut himself. And he had broken 2 fingers in the process. And he had no clue any of these things happened until things calmed down and the paramedics showed up, and they look at him bleeding, and he realizes, and then the pain kind of sets in and everything. So I went to the hospital because I thought he had gotten into the accident, because they called his mom and said, your son's being transported by paramedics, because she was next of kin. And she panicked and she called me, and she's screaming and crying because she didn't know what to do. I said, I'm going there now. It's not too far from me. I'll call you. Just stay put, because she was in no condition to move. And I got there and I found out what he had done, and I called her and I consoled her. I said, it's fine. Nothing's wrong. It's just his hand. But when I found out what he had done, I was thinking to myself, wow, you didn't even think. Like, you just stop your car in the middle of a highway. And this is the 401 in Toronto, which is like one of the busiest highways in North America, maybe the world. And he just literally pulled over and jumped out and jumped towards this and kind of saved that person. How many people would do that? Who would do that in those spaces or instances? We don't know. But those people are made that way. The first responders are kind of like, you first have to have the will and the DNA to do this before you are taught and you go through all the regiments and the training and everything else to become, say, a firefighter or paramedic or a nurse or whatever your position is going to be. You got to have that will to be saving people at the cost of even your own life. So it's what they do is amazing, and I really do like that Pete Davidson talks about it and mentions it and keeps the memory of it, because
Right.
I these people need that kind of recognition, and I like let's talk about the prevention you brought up. And you're right. There are places that we should be more preventative in our actions. So, like the housing situation that you talked about, it's only a profit matter, nothing else. It's
Yes.
only a profit
Right.
matter, because there's no other reason why you wouldn't make homes safer. What is the reason? Like, I'm going to give you an option to make your house earthquake proof, waterproof, flood proof, fireproof, and all those things, but it's going to cost $1 million more. Well, you know what? I can't sell that house anymore because it doesn't, match the market and everything else. I'm losing on that house. It's not profitable. I'm not building that house. I'm going to build a house that the flood's going to wash away, that the fire is going to run through and kill everybody in the first 3 minutes of it, and the earthquake's going to topple it roof down onto the ground. Why? Because that house is 300,000, and you know what? I can sell it all day. So prevention has become a friction point of capitalism, because we're looking for profit, and essentially prevention prevents profits. So
Yes.
it's becoming a preventative measure for capitalism in its own right. So that needs to change. That needs to
It,
change.
it,
Policies need to not take into account the profits, but take into account the security and the safety, and the reduction of the need for our first responders to strictly be, especially at a time now where we have all these wildfires and earthquakes and ramping
oh
up.
yeah.
We need those people to be safer, right? Not more hazardous in their environment. So maybe if we help first responders by building better, then we can leave them to focus on the major issues like the wildfires that they're fighting without
Right.
necessarily dying and as opposed to the things that are happening.
They the race that I have been doing, the money that goes towards the race, it goes to a Burn Foundation fund for the Georgia firefighters. And I think John Stewart, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was he was involved in trying to get a law. I don't know if it was a law, trying to help those firefighters that did survive. They had lung damage from saving those people. The ones that didn't pass away, they have lung damage, and they have issues with the health care. That's just, we could go down this path, and there's so many issues with
Yeah,
their
it's
brain.
sad, isn't it? It's
Yes.
sad
Mm-hmm.
that they have to go through this. Like, you just saved people, and whether it's the government, the insurance companies, the healthcare system, uh, maybe even our billionaires, right? Like, New York has its fair share of billionaires, right? And if
Yeah.
you were, a first responder who went there to save people, regardless of whether you save 5 people, none, or 10,000 people, I don't care. You went there with the goal of helping people, and you came back and you have issues now. You lost a leg, your lungs damaged, whatever it may be. I think there should be a fund that supports these people in a way that, they can, now they have this problem for the rest of their lives, but at least we can alleviate the other stresses that they have. And when I see these
Yes.
people, and it's just like military vets, like you said, we can go down this road in so many different ways. When I see veterans in the US and they say, I served 2 tours in these places and they're back and they have disabilities, or, they're out on the street and they're homeless or something. And I'm thinking to myself, do you know how much money the United States government has? Do you know how many billionaires and multimillionaires are in this country who can really come together and say, we're not leaving our vets behind. We're not leaving them to their own association and these little, small things that they can do for each other through that. Like, I'll give you $1,000 more a month because you lost an eye. Like, no, that's not how it's
Right.
supposed to be. Here's a paid off home and a car and all of those things that you don't have to worry about, so that you can live your life at least in a decent way for the service you've given us. We do
Right.
this for athletes. We do this for basketball players,
Yes.
NFL players, baseball players all day. We give them hundreds of millions. Again, it goes back to profit. The first responder or the military vet that comes back injured is not profitable. There's no purpose for me to give that person anything. But that basketball player, I have to even nurture that basketball player through injury and spend so much money because, when they come back, they're worth so much and I've already invested so much. So it all becomes a matter of profit, which is really sad. So,
Yeah, it
I
is.
wish people, not just Americans, the world around, I wish people pay a little more attention to
Right.
these things.
They give too much attention to, I mean, like athletes and performers and blah, but those people that are sacrificing and helping us be here, helping the community, I think they should be more of a priority than paying, I'm sorry. That's just, like I said, sports,
No.
but they
Don't
should
be
come
sorry,
first.
and it's nothing wrong. And I don't even think the athletes would argue with this. I don't think an athlete is
Yes.
going to say, no. You know what? Never mind all the people who are in our prevention, security, and protective services. Pay me, and never mind them. Right? I'm sure they will say, no, we need to focus on them as well because it's not taken away from the athlete. I'm not saying cap the NFL at $50,000 salary a year for each player. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying if we are going to invest $500 million in a player, can we not invest $100 million in our first responders?
Right. To keep your stadium safe, right?
Yes. Yes. To keep your homes, your streets, your stadiums, and
Yeah.
everything else. And you know what? This also raises a whole, and I want to speak about this because I think it's important to face the issues and not kind of shy away or not raise them and stuff. There is the conspiracy issues. There is the troubling facts that you see sometimes. There are those political angles that people kind of retort with. But to me, yes, I don't like war. I don't think war is good. I think we should resolve things in a civil manner. I mean, compassiviste means that in essence, compassion in action and from with a feminine root, to kind of seeing eye to eye and being inclusive and interacting with each other. But not everybody's going to be that way. So we are going to need people who are going to support our current makeup, which is nations. Currently, we have borders and we have nations, and that's just the way we live right now. Maybe this needs to change, but for this moment, this is how we live. Now, if the US wants to provide some kind of safety and security, or if Germany, or if the UK, or any part of the world, India wants to provide some kind of safety and security within its borders and its sovereignty, they need to have an element of defense against, rogue attacks and terrorism or other countries or whatever it may be. So I'm not talking on a political level, but that militant, that person who turns 18 or 20 or whatever age decides, I'm going to serve. I'm going to go and protect my United States against these kind of invasions or attacks. They're not thinking on the political level. They're not thinking of, I'm a racist. I'm going to go join the military because I want to go to the Middle East and kill them. But they're not thinking that way because they don't even know that that's going to happen. You don't know that you're going to join
Right.
the military and 9 years later, there's going to be a war in Iraq and you're going to get your chance of killing Middle Easterners. Nobody has that knowledge. So when you join, you're joining because you sincerely want to help. And, you go and you do that. And when you go on these tours, I see so often their families live a very difficult life too, because you're living on a certain salary. You're now, for example, the father left, like your husband wanted to go, right? I mean, it's you and two boys, and pets and a household, and things change. I mean, one person's not there anymore. It's the same thing as, a divorce or someone dying. Like the person is physically not there to support, and they're not there in many ways because they're in the middle of a battlefield for you. So that anxiety, that stress, all of those things, but yet we impose on those families to still make their car payments and mortgage payments, and they have to still go
Yes.
grocery shopping for the kids and school and make sure everything's okay. And they can't have a moment to cry because no, the world doesn't stop for you. That's just inhumanity. That's really inhumanity. I think
Right.
we need to do a lot better for our first responders, our
Yeah.
militaries, the personnel that are there helping us and saving us, and show a lot more respect. I like what you do in your country with showing respect to the first responders and the uniforms and all of those things. I see it, at baseball games. I see it at Walmart. I see it wherever it may be. There is a level of respect that Americans have for people in service, people in uniform. Did you ever see that? Because you grew up that way, right? So I want to know your
perspective. I grew up that way, and that's why my husband had already been in the military. He already did his time. I didn't. That's why I'm like, what was your why here? You know what I'm saying? And I appreciate all that, everything, but I saw how it affected my family with my father's being gone. Okay. That was stressful for my mother. But she's a strong woman. And then at the same time, we didn't know what was going to happen after 9/11. He could have died, and I would have been you don't know. I could have been a widow with 2 little boys. And my mother shared so many stories of all these other military spouses. It's just tough. The first responder spouses, think about that too. It's tough on them too. One of my neighbors, he's a
they're the same people. Sorry,
yeah, they're the same. Yes,
but they're the same. To me, the military is the first responder of the nation.
Exactly.
Just like the firefighter is the first responder in a blaze, and the nurse or the paramedic is the first responder at the scene of an accident. They're all first responders.
I had over 20 years of that experience, and I didn't, I appreciate it. But I was more, my gut, my instinct was something that's going to happen to him. And I didn't want my boys to grow up without the father. And it all worked out. He's a brave person. He'll do anything in a second. That's just his nature. And my stepfather, I keep calling my stepfather, the one that was the military attaché. He met my future husband. He got a check mark. So that's a good deal. And same with my brother too, because that's another thing. I had all these protectors. They would be the first responders if anybody messed with me. So Betty, that's just something I really appreciate, but I would have supported my husband if he stayed in the military. Do you know what I'm saying? It was just a scary experience, him wanting to go back. I think they were recruiting a lot of those guys like my husband to come back because that's what was going on. And, I'm like, if you made that decision, I can understand, but I think it was our little boys, our sons that made him stay. I say I convinced him. It was really seeing our boys, and he's seen a lot of stuff too. And we need to respect, I think like the wording that we use. I'm sure you heard about, kind of going off tangent here, like defund the police. That stupid stuff was going on. And that's not what it meant. Do you know what I'm saying? They were using the wrong verbiage. And so people didn't understand it. And that's kind of why I come in and, you got to use the right word. And they wanted to retrain the police, not defund it. They were using the wrong. And so we don't know. I don't know if there's a shortage of police officers. We don't know that. They are very, very brave too. And that's a role. I could go work. I did work. I never told you this. One of my jobs in college, I worked at a military base, the police services department. I worked for but I was I was good at typing. I was good. That's what they had me do. I would do reports. I was a college student, but I learned it. I saw so much stuff from that environment too. And the provost marshal is kind of like the sheriff for the military base. So I worked for that person, and I made some great. I love diversity, by the way. I think that is the takeaway I have from my upbringing, being around them, different people. And I think that's why I'm more empathetic, maybe. I try to help people. And at the same time, you want to do the right thing. You don't want to listen to BS stories like the defund the police. I'm sorry, that's just a BS story. I don't know who started that. I think it's sorry, but, there's just a lot of, maybe they need more training. I really think that's what happens. The police need more training and we're not taking away the money. We need more money to help them understand what they're doing. And again, that I think every country is dealing with this. It's not just the United States. It's just, and how we have our communities put together. We just need to support each other and be curious, right? I think that'll help solve problems. I really think I should say curious. I use that word. Sorry, it's my favorite word. But I just want to help so many people, and that's kind of why you and I connected. We just want to help people, and we hear something, we learn about it, and you take action, and you have to take action in your way. I'm not talking, like throwing millions of dollars, and I don't have that to throw, but I can take a step in the way I can help. And like my mom did what she did, and my best way is I went to go help her in DC later. You know what I'm saying? To help her. She was emotionally drained, and my stepfather was gone. And so I had one of her daughters went to go help support her. And she was not, trust me, she was not her, very, drained, not getting enough sleep. Just even the psychologist, just things like that. We just need to appreciate what these people are doing. And we want to make sure we're not just focusing, like you said, on profit, and power is another thing too. The right kind of people need to be in charge, right?
And I think we need to focus on how we channel the information that we get as well, because a lot of people have now used the 9/11 narrative to start theories and conspiracy theories and misinformation. And, at a point, even if it's the truth, right? Even if the whole event was a hoax and they deliberately brought down the towers to create the wars that they did. Like even that craziest of conspiracy theories, whatever it may be, even if we are going to say, fine, we're going to believe it or not, that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the people on the ground didn't know that morning that two towers are coming down. Whether it was a government thing, whether the CIA was doing it or whether the plane actually went into the tower and that's why it came down. I don't care. What I care about is somebody ran towards the tower to try to help and died doing that. So let's forget that rhetoric for a moment. Let's forget that narrative. Let's forget that story. Let's focus on the person who, against everybody else, was running towards the dust that was taking over New York and trying to see what they can do to help. And you got to think, and you got to remember that in this person's mind, it's not like I'm Superman or Superwoman and I'm this hero that's going to stop the whole problem. But they were just looking for one dog or one human or one anything to help and take out. Because how many people can you carry on your shoulders and run out of a fire or a tumbling building? You're only looking for that one person that you can really help. So even at that level of one-to-one support, like, let's focus on that for a minute. Let's focus on that humanity for a minute and forget kind of dirtying that conversation with discussions of, but if a plane hit a building in that angle, it wouldn't come down and it's made this way and the steel bars hold it up that way. That's a whole different conversation. You want to have that conversation? That's a different show. That's a different discussion. It's not for now. It's not what we're doing right here. At one point, we need to focus on the people. We need to focus on what's happening. We need to focus on who is helping, how we can support them helping, what we really need to do as a community to rally around them. I think September 11, in memory, now that we're almost a quarter century away, should be a space where we can rebuild communities around our first responders to say,
yes,
we want to prevent that and we want to support the people who are going to save us from a reenactment of this in any other way. It doesn't have to be terrorism. I mean, it could literally be, I remember a little while ago, a plane in India crash landed on a medical school building and people died and everything else. I mean, that needs first responders too. It doesn't have to always be, a terrorist attack. Things could happen by accident. So how do we support them? How do we raise this? How do we, engage within our communities with those people. And regarding the police as well, like you said, um, there are cases of police violence. There are cases of police brutality. I mean, somebody who comes around and says there aren't those things, they're lies. Let's not concentrate on the misinformation. That's the misinformation, because we saw the George Floyd's and other situations that happened.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's fine. We saw those happen, but it doesn't mean that the entire country or world police force is built upon this narrative. There is
Yeah.
this happening. So exactly what you said. How do we solve this? We need more people involved. We need more training involved. We need more funding to be able to conduct these things so that we can make our streets safer. Even with mental health. I mean, many police departments don't know how to deal with an autistic person in a situation of police involvement because they don't have the training. Why? Profit. Nobody has, funding to give to these things. And yet we're at the same time, when we're cash strapped to help people's lives, we're not cash strapped to buy a $2 million car. We're not cash strapped to buy a house that we don't get to see every corner because it's so big. We're not cash strapped for those things. We're not cash strapped for luxury, but we are cash strapped to help people's lives, which I don't get. So, we really need to reconsider our efforts and put first responders in that first position that they really deserve in society.
Yeah, they do. And that's why I did the run stuff to raise money for those firefighters in my local area. It's not it's probably global stuff, but it makes, it gets me involved. And we even donate certain things to the local fire department that they appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to
Yeah, they
respect
do.
them. You got to respect
You got
them.
to
Say what?
respect, you got to be involved, you got to have compassion, and you have to be involved. If people are going to take anything from this conversation, other than the memory and kind of going back into that day, if they remember, and if you're too young to remember, doesn't matter. What matters is there were people who made the situation better, who
Yeah,
made the situation less tragic. That's the right way of saying it. Just like if you were older enough to go through the pandemic, the first responders made it less tragic. So we need to be involved with them. We need to support them. We need to, give them that platform that they really are on, and that pedestal, and support them in that way. The same way we do other types of idols. Just like we
right.
do, with athletes and musicians and other celebrities and actors and stuff. I think we should really, glorify and turn into heroes the people that the films are made about. I mean, we have films that are made about, you know, some heroic people. So instead of making the idol the actor who plays the heroic person, make the hero the idol, because that's a more direct line to the person and how their actions are.
Right. We need to do more stuff like that. Right. I'm trying to think. Tom Hanks is one of those people that does some great stuff around that. I can't remember who the pilot was. Remember it landed in, probably remember this, in New York on the river there. He landed
Yes,
the
I
plane.
remember that.
I can't
Yeah,
remember the name of the movie.
yeah, right.
He played
But
the
Tom
pilot.
Hanks
He was
played
the
the
hero.
actor. Yeah, he played the pilot. Yeah, he
And
played the
that's kind of
pilot in
what
that
we
film.
need
And remember that
more.
pilot went through hell. Like they
Yes.
put him through so much, and why? Because he saved people. Like
Right.
where is his Walk of Fame star? Like Tom Hanks has one, but that pilot doesn't have one. And that's what I'm
Correct.
talking about. We need that, we need some recognition. We need some reward. We need some support. Somebody needs to clap for these people. We need a Walk of Fame. In New York City, if anything, like there has to be a place that says, this is in memory, not just of those people, because, I've been to Ground Zero. You see the plaques, you see those things, but you need something more visible in the middle of the city that says this type of human supported us during this time.
Yes. And that's so everybody is brave. A pilot is brave. Just so many people. A bus driver taking kids to school is
Yes.
brave.
Yes. Very
Just
brave,
we
actually.
don't.
I know.
Yes, but
Teachers today. I mean, you don't know when
yes.
the next, school shooting is going to be or where it's going to be. The fact that you go in every day, and you face those situations and you try to, I mean, in the last school shooting, there was, a teacher died, and she died protecting children. I
Right.
mean, imagine if your ex-CEO was there, that would be a different story. Like, that person would throw the kids in front of the shooter to run away, but this
Uh-huh.
person actually shielded them and died shielding kids. So
Exactly.
I can't say enough about these people. Brigitte,
Right.
thank you
Yep.
for speaking on Compassiviste Dialogues, and thank you for your inspiring activism and compassion. Because even if all you can do is run a marathon to help, you're doing something. You're doing something. You're trying to be there. Whatever ways we can be there, we should be there. And thank you for being a genuine compassiviste. You lead with compassion. It's people like yourself who inspire us to push through the madness and the tragedies that happen in our lives. Uh, to the audience, I hope you've taken something from this, and you've taken away showing consideration and compassion and involvement with first responders, because what they do really keeps our communities safe in many different ways. Subscribe to Compassiviste Dialogues channel so I can bring you interesting conversations like this with Brigitte and other people who are shaping the world, making it a better place, making it a more compassionate place. All links to Brigitte Cutshall, her Gemini Media, Real Things Living podcast. It's a really interesting podcast. I advise a lot of you to listen. She brings in some really cool people on there and have really nice, compassionate stories, and just it's lovely to listen to. And of course, our Compassiviste, all of those are linked below, and click on them and go see Brigitte. We're here to help change the world together. I'm Ali Horia.